All right. Since we're going to be we're going to recess into closed session, which means we're going to be coming back out here in open session, but some folks may choose to leave us at this time. So I'm just going to follow up with commissioner reports and call in Commissioner Hosty.
Your Honor, I feel compelled to comment on some of the activities the last 2 weeks that were reported by the Forest Park Review. It's always been an understanding that closed-door sessions stay closed-door because they're sensitive matters that are discussed in there. Sometimes it's about employees' review, sometimes it's about employees' salary, sometimes it's about union negotiations, sometimes property disposition or purchasing. There's reasons why it's closed-door. Recently, one commissioner decided that closed-door didn't mean anything and leaked, for better words, a half-assed story to the paper. I believe an inaccurate story to the paper. He commented on my proposal for a large increase for our village administrator. I put out a number to start a negotiation, to start a conversation. When one commissioner asked me what I thought, I put a number out figuring it would be a good point to start and talk about. I've had an opportunity to work with all 4 village administrators in this village, and the current one we have is doing a better job than anyone we've had in the past. He is a bargain even if he did get the raise that I proposed, which I wouldn't have expected him to get. The paper reported that with his salary and compensation package, he makes this much. I think that's disingenuous when you have all of the employees that can get into that package for retirement, for health care, things like that. If you add that on to everybody. Our village administrator is the 16th highest paid employee in the village, not the top 5, not the top 10. He's the 16th highest paid. He works the longest hours. Over the last 3 years, I've watched him work with our bonding companies, save us $1 million. That's not a fake number, $1 million in interest payments. We've developed a much more green attitude. We've added the LED lighting, which is at no cost to the village, a long-term improvement. I think it was pointed out earlier that we replaced the lights about 30 years ago. Well, we're not going to have to replace them at any cost in the next 30 years. There are a number of things that he's done day in, day out. He works with the unions in negotiating to save us the legal fees. We've saved a fortune on how we negotiate because of his relationship. I think it's been poorly reported, and as such, our village administrator has been put in a bad light. How we manage our closed-door session among the 5 of us is one thing, but when an employee gets dragged through the mud in the public, it's wrong. I've had many opportunities over the last couple weeks to sit down with people one-on-one and explain to them what happened, where they misread what happened by the paper, and when I was done, they understood and had a better opinion of the village administrator, but it was wrong to put them in that light. If the paper or people on this board want to do something political, then do it on this board. Don't make it of the employees. And I felt it was time to come out and explain that publicly. I did not respond to the article. I said no comment at this time because I felt closed-door session should be closed door. There was no comment at that time. I was given the opportunity to break the trust of closed door, and I chose not to. And now that the article's out, it's been blown wide open and inaccurately at that. So I felt tonight in front of the camera and the public it was a good time to discuss this and put it out there on record. And as we go into a closed-door session, I'd hope that people on this board can honor the agreement that every other village has for closed-door sessions to keep negotiations and employee reviews private until which time it is negotiated and ready to be put in public so that people aren't tried in a newspaper for doing a great job and made to look like they're not.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Hoskins.
Mayor, in response to Commissioner Hosty's comments, the employee in question has never had a formal review. So while Commissioner Hosty may feel like this employee has done a fabulous job, in some respects this employee may have exceeded expectations, but in other respects, I have a very different opinion. And there's a purpose for closed session. Closed session is so a body can formulate a strategy, formulate a joint opinion. If we're negotiating with a union, then we need to come together and put together a bargaining strategy as we go against the union. If we're negotiating a land sale or land acquisition, we need to come together to formulate an opinion But in this case, we had a commissioner who, for his own personal motivations, was essentially prepared to take money from the village. When I made the comments that I made, I don't think I was acting adversely to the village. And there has been a strong reaction, and it's been a well-founded reaction. And so while some people have one opinion and see things one way, there are a lot of other people in this town who see things a very different way. And, you know, you can talk about honor as much as you want, but I don't know that, you know, honor is a subjective term as well. So I'll just leave it at that, Mayor.
Okay, Commissioner Mannix.
Mr. Mayor, I too read that article, and I know we're probably getting a little off topic here with our actual commissioner reports. And I would be as extraordinarily interested in potentially reprimanding the commissioner who decided to violate the closed-door meeting, regardless of your position on any personnel in the village working on behalf of the village, collective bargaining agreements. The purpose for the closed-door meeting is so that we have an opportunity to talk, to address those issues, vet those issues behind closed doors, and not run to the media as soon as that door opens to have it played out in the newspaper, regardless of your position, either pro Commissioner Hosty or pro Commissioner Hoskins on that issue. It's the principle of the thing. That's what is truly, truly upsetting here, is that someone decided to violate the sanctity of those closed-door sessions, run to the newspaper with an article that got one side of the story. That is disappointing that happened, and I, for one, would strongly encourage us to look at some type of reprimand, a formal reprimand, just so that there is a very clear and concise process that our village will go through should this ever happen again. That would be my recommendation. I was disappointed in Commissioner Hoskins that he decided that he felt the need to go to the paper, and more importantly, I was disappointed in the paper, even though they have an obligation to print the news, and sometimes I disagree with what they print, that they decided to run with that story, just because it did violate the closed-door executive session. On another matter, Mr. Mayor, it hasn't snowed, so the public works guys haven't been out there doing a whole lot of work. Other than that, that's all I have for this evening, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Harris.
Yes, Mayor. I don't think that there's anything that says you can't talk about closed sessions. I don't think you can reprimand somebody. You might just get the attorney on that. I don't think you can reprimand somebody for speaking about a closed session meeting publicly, to my understanding.
Well, you can't vote on and pass a reprimand like that, but certainly you each reserve the right to speak out publicly in an open session about what you feel is appropriate. So you wouldn't be voting on anything tonight anyway because it's not on the agenda to vote, but potentially you could speak, but unfortunately dealing with multiple municipalities, some people in some towns abide by the closed door concept better than others, and those that fall short, there's really not much you can do to hold them in contempt or anything of that nature. So,
okay, thank you. Secondly, on that matter, I was at the closed session meeting, and I thought it was actually reported fairly accurately. The only thing that got out of hand was the comments where people sounded like they assumed that Tim got that raise, where it didn't say that in the article. It just said it was proposed. So the article itself was fairly accurate, in my eyes at least. That's the only comment on that. I was going to comment on the LED lights, but Tim did such a great job, I can't even add to that. And that's my report.
I think, Commissioner, your point is well taken about, an article could have some accuracy in it. The pitfall is, and this was a classic example, where the perception in the public is Tim was going to get this raise. That's why acting in a responsible way, and you were there, you know that no decision was made, correct? No decision was made. So what happened is a commissioner that in this case Commissioner Hoskins, who did not engage in any real conversation, deliberations in that closed session, remained quiet. I mean, you spoke, you shared your thoughts. Commissioner Mannix spoke, shared his thoughts. We all know Commissioner Hosty spoke and shared his thoughts. That's what those deliberations are for, to begin those conversations. Nothing was decided that night, unless I missed something. But yet, what happened is an elected official took it upon himself to divulge those conversations, and that's all it was. And then they write a story which absolutely gets taken out of context. I mean, I've certainly, just like you, I've gotten feedback also. I think that we all get feedback, and I'm included in that too. I mean, people talk to me, and certainly they would have every right to be irate with that type of an increase. But the fact of the matter is, no decision was made. So what does that mean? That means that our administrator, as of right now, has not gotten any increase. And we've not even agreed to any type of increase, not even 1 penny. So really, what was served? How were the residents of Forest Park rightfully served? By getting them misinformation, really, is what it was, because only one person, the whole story was about one person's comments. One out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In fact, I had this kind of back and forth conversation with the newspaper, but once they have it in their mind, they're going to write a story because they feel it's news. I mean, somebody in this room here at the end of our meeting tonight could make a comment about the publisher of the Forest Park Review. And should that be taken as fact just because one person makes some comment? I think what we're talking about is the responsibility. Responsibility. And, you know, that not only is attributable to us as elected officials, to be responsible. I mean, I know I too, Commissioner Hoskins, am responsible to the public, just like you. But we didn't take any action that night to be irresponsible to the public. All we had was conversations. This is a very on-point, classic example where a comment made by one person leaked to the press. They see it as a juicy story, when what is the story? That the administrator almost received a Christmas bonus. And I said to myself, what? How does a comment by one person out of a body of 5, how does that get anybody almost anything? But it made for good reading. That's all it did. It made for good reading. I don't know, what the back end of the story is, what the true motivation is. I personally feel it was irresponsible. That didn't need to happen. I could see it if there was a feeling that this was going to get ramrodded down. I can see, politically, because this is mostly about politics. That's what it's about. I could see where those that feel they're in the minority felt that this was something going to get ramrodded and passed on the proverbial 3-2 vote. I didn't have that feeling that night, did you? I didn't.
Well, if you recall, the discussion is, we'll probably talk about it again tonight. The discussion was we were going to do more research and continue the discussion. So it's not a dead issue by any stretch.
I agree.
But you wouldn't know that reading the newspaper. That's the inaccurately. They said, thank God the 3 voted down Hosty. That was in the article.
Well, there was a straw poll taken, and the mayor conducted it, and Commissioner Mannix and myself, and by default, maybe not speaking, Commissioner Hoskins. But it was also, to me, the part that I didn't understand is
Governing by silence.
is the mayor writes the agenda and something was brought to us by a commissioner. Now, if we can start bringing things to the table, I'll gladly put things on the table for meetings myself, but I didn't know how Commissioner Hosty proposed this at a meeting when you set the agenda for the meeting, which seemed a little
closed door
odd. Because
session was for employee.
You excused Tim and Vanessa and then started the discussion on Tim. It wasn't the mayor's doing, and the mayor runs the meeting.
Was the agenda item for closed session employee raises?
Did you excuse Tim and Vanessa and
I
start
did. I
the
didn't think it was
discussion?
proper to talk about an employee in front of them.
Did it come from you?
Or in a newspaper, but either way, no. I did ask Tim to leave, and I had asked the mayor for permission to do that because we're talking about raises for the exempt employees, which he happens to be one of.
And if you recall, because
Where would I bring that up?
we did go into closed session for exempt employees, right?
Correct.
I mean, that's all a matter of record. In fact, it should be in our minutes, that we approved tonight. And for some reason, I mean, unless I'm missing something, Tim is also one of our exempt employees. So it's inclusive of Tim and all of our department heads, and then we have a small number of non-department head exempt employees. It's all inclusive. And if you recall, we began our discussions about the exempt employees in general, but then Commissioner Hosty wanted to talk specifically about Tim, and that's the point in which we excused him.
Would the proper way for that to be is have the discussion with you prior, so you were still running the meeting, because it seemed like Commissioner Hosty was done running the meeting, and I thought that should come from you, not from Commissioner Hosty.
And I think that's a point well taken, but and even I would think Commissioner Harris, even yourself, having been we'll call it on the minority side many times,
Occasionally.
and you were there. You participated in the meeting. I think that all of us have a responsibility to at least share your views, share your ideas. When you remain silent and you don't say anything, essentially, what really gets accomplished by that?
Mayor, I asked you point blank if Tim had asked for a raise, and you said, not that I'm aware of. And then you directed the clerk to do a review of salaries paid to village managers of neighboring communities, and you included Oak Park, a town much larger than Forest Park, in that review. So it was going somewhere.
Commissioner, don't attempt to mislead. I know that you've got your press secretary out here, and you've got members of the public.
Are you attempting to mislead, Mayor? You've had the bully pulpit for about 5 minutes now, given your side of things.
Let's put things in the real context.
In your context.
The real context is, don't make it up.
Okay.
The real context is, do you recall saying, because I specifically asked you, Commissioner, do you have any thoughts on the idea? And your first comment was, no, I did not come here tonight prepared to discuss this topic.
I did have thoughts, and I don't owe you my mental process, Mayor. I really don't.
Do you remember saying you did not come prepared to discuss the topic?
I remember I asked you if Tim had asked you for a raise,
So
and
you
you
got
said,
selective
That is
memory.
what he
not
said,
that
Your
I'm
Honor.
aware of.
And anybody else who's in the room will tell you that's exactly what he said, and that's all he said, because he stared at a wall the whole damn meeting. He doesn't contribute anything. He takes it, goes to the paper, and then plays out his meeting the way he thinks it went in his head. You contribute nothing, Commissioner. Nothing.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're quite welcome. It's about time that people knew.
Tell
We
the
sit in
people.
those rooms
Tell the
and we
people.
watch you do nothing, in and out, every time. Then you run to the press.
Tell the people that I do nothing.
I think
don't
that
do anything.
I think
You
that
do
we
everything.
kind of agreed by consensus, to try and, move this process forward, that we would collect some data, do some comparisons. And I know, I think Oak Park, we didn't just settle on Oak Park. I think there's about seven or eight communities.
So you did take action then? You directed the clerk to do a survey of benefits paid to village managers and administrators in neighboring communities, some with much larger revenues than Forest Parks.
Commissioner, let's tell the whole story. Don't just tell little pieces of story. We agreed by consensus, although you didn't say much, so I don't know if you were part of that consensus or not. We settled on, we read off a number of towns that we wanted to start with for doing some comparisons. And yes, then we delegated the task for the clerk to collect that data. So it's not just Oak Park. We've got about 7 or 8 communities. And as we continue this process, we may expand that, or we may say, no, this is satisfactory enough, the ones that we're looking at, but at least we have something to work in terms of comparisons with. But, that was only based upon those that offered some suggestions. Unfortunately, Commissioner Hoskins, you weren't one of those. You remained quiet, except for after the meeting, when none of us were there. Despite political persuasions, despite whether you're in the majority or the minority, I think as elected officials, we should at least honor and respect one another, to be collegial to one another. Nobody said that everyone has to agree with my opinion, and nobody says everyone has to agree with your opinion, if you ever offer one. That's the whole dynamics, of democracy. But unless you say something, I can't even attempt, I can't read anybody's mind. I thought that we had a pretty good conversation going, and we didn't end it that night. That was just the beginning. God knows what will happen as we move forward. Certainly, there are provisions for, council didn't touch on it, there are provisions for censure. It's basically meaningless. There are no provisions for reprimands. There are provisions for censure. I mean, that's in our code right now. And, does the law say that you cannot divulge any conversations from executive session? Of course, it does not say that. But what is the right thing to do? What is the right thing to do? And I go back to, if something was, going to be, I'm calling it ramrodding for just lack of any other way to describe it, or, had we recessed last meeting, came back down here, and approved that raise, then by all means, all bets are off, because then a decision was made, action was taken, and then the newspaper could have a party with it. That's fine. But as we even stand here today, no action was taken, not even 1 penny in a raise, but we had a salacious story. And, so that's, the newspapers like that, because then they get awards from the Illinois Press Association. When they can write these salacious stories, they get reviewed by their peers, meaning other people that own newspapers at the Press Association. They get an award, they get a trophy, they get to hang in their offices. Well, Yahoo, that really does the public well, to scandalize an employee of the village who has not even received 1 penny yet in an increase, to place his name and all of the other stuff that goes along with that out there in the public domain. For what? For what? all of us should be cognizant and be respectful and be collegial, and most importantly, do what's right. Otherwise, the law doesn't need to have these provisions as an exemption to go into closed session. We'll just air it all out here. We are going to recess into closed session, which means that we're going to come back out here in open session. We may or may not take action on this item number 2 under additional new business. It all depends upon the outcome of our deliberations in closed session. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to recess into closed session.
So moved, Your Honor.
It's been moved by Hosty. Is there a second?
Second, Your Honor.
Seconded by Mannix.
Mayor,
Yes, counsel.
the item on the agenda indicates deliberations concerning salary schedules of one or more classes of municipal employees, but I'm also under the impression that we are going to discuss collective bargaining, at least in relation to item number 2 on the agenda. Can we add that to the motion, please? Collective bargaining.
Yes, we can. Commissioner Hosty, would you have any objection to amending your motion to include both one or more classes of municipal employees and also collective bargaining agreement?
No objection whatsoever.
And the second was by Mannix.
Sounds good, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. All right. Any discussion on the motion? The clerk may proceed with the roll call to recess into closed session.
Commissioner Hosty?
Aye.
Commissioner Hoskins?
Aye.
Commissioner Mannix?
Aye.
Commissioner Harris?
Aye.
Mayor Calderon?
Aye. We stand recessed. We'll see you when we get back.